Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second RecoveryView.com live show. We have a wonderful show tonight. This is our 51st edition, and we have our authors, our featured authors, 4 of them. I wish we could have all 8 of you guys here. But if you go to RecoveryView.com, you'll be able to read all the complete articles, and we have other authors, Renee Popovits and others, Stamp Corbin, that were not able to be on our show tonight, but we will bring them on our show on a different evening. But tonight we are privileged to have Russell Rice with us. He's at the top box. This is Brady Bunch style. And he's a local therapist that owns a treatment center. He's going to be speaking to us about adolescent trauma. He's an LMFT. Hi, Russell. He's coming from Redlands, California. We have Spiro Alexio, and he wrote an article with Terrence Gorski, who most of you know, who is dear to my heart, who has been a hero for me in this industry, the Gorski model of relapse and synapse. So he is going to be talking to us about that article that he co-authored with Terrence Gorski. He's going to be on the show speaking about that, and Terry. We have Dr. Steven Sideroff, who's from UCLA, and he has written several books, but the one we're going to be talking about tonight is his article will be on resilience, and specifically resilience and recovery through this coronavirus. I'd asked him to do that because he is an international speaker and author on resilience. And I think we all need to know a little bit of tools. Maybe he can help us with that. And biofeedback, neurofeedback. He's a neuroscientist. He's amazing. And then we have Gina Tabrizy, who most of you know. She's a local therapist with us. Hi, Gina, from Laguna Beach. Dr. Sideroff's from LA, and Spiro's coming from Las Vegas. And Gina, we are featuring her book. She just published her book. It's a yay! And it's an affirmation book, so she's going to be reading some affirmations at the end of she'll be the 4th speaker, so that we can all end the evening with beautiful affirmations from Gina. And congratulations, Gina. I know it's not easy finishing a book. So congratulations. Now that I have the panel, would you all, Russell, would you like to, we'll start with you. I'm going to go in order then right here. Russell, would you like to say hi to our audience?
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, great.
Especially with such a distinguished panel here.
Spiro? Okay, we're not able, you're on mute. Okay, we're going to have to unmute. Deb, do you want to pull Spiro down and unmute him?
Am I unmuted?
Okay,
Testing.
There you go. You're unmuted. Go ahead, Spiro.
Testing. Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here, and looking forward to talking about Terry and hearing about your work.
Thank you. And Gina, say a couple words to our audience.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be back here with you and Josie and Recovery View and all the wonderful panelists. And I'm jealous of Spiro's rocking chair. That looks really amazing. I love rocking chairs.
We'll have to get you one for your office. And Dr. Sideroff, would you like to say a couple words to the audience? I know you'll be speaking in a minute, but.
Yes, hi, Josie and everybody else. It's a pleasure to be here. Look forward to giving my talk on my article, and I'll be with you in a minute.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's see. For the next edition, I just want to say before we go on to our speakers, will be September. So we're doing them every 6 weeks. For those of you who are following us via email, please go on to our website, RecoveryView.com, and register as a free member, and you'll be getting our editions if you're not already on our email list. And then you can also submit articles to Beverly, who is she's our program editor. So if you're interested in participating with future articles, our next edition will be in September for Recovery Month. That is what we're going to be celebrating. So without further delay, because we have 4 wonderful distinguished guests, I'd like to bring up Dr. Steven Sideroff, and he's a psychologist consultant at UCLA. And his topic of his article tonight is Resilient Recovery, the ability to self-regulate is at the heart of sustainable recovery during the coronavirus. Welcome, Dr. Sideroff. And go ahead and please talk to us a little bit about your article and any pearls that you could give us regarding resilience specifically during these times.
Yes, definitely, Josie. And on the one hand, the coronavirus presents a unique crisis, experience, challenge for all of us. At the same time, it highlights the importance and impact of dealing with stress in the recovery process. We know that stress is a primary source of vulnerability in the recovery process. And I like to think about my work with peak performing elite and professional athletes around this particular issue, because one of the things that's very true about how they prepare for their peak performance experiences, and these experiences are typically when they're under a lot of pressure. And when they're under a lot of pressure, one thing that's very important for all of them is that they have overtrained for some of the basic behaviors, actions, skills of their profession. So a basketball player practices and over practices their dribbling, their passing, and their shooting, so that when they're in the pressure situation, these are second nature to them. They don't have to be concerned and worried about it. And I've taken that notion and I've brought it into the concept of resilient recovery. And the move or the basic behavior that we're talking about is the ability to self-regulate, which means essentially the ability to turn down the activation of your nervous system, the ability to recover after the baseline of your nervous system after a stressful experience, so that you have a confidence in your ability to calm your nervous system to go to a place of calm. Now, autonomic nervous system, autonomic means automatic, and for years and years, in fact, for hundreds of years, it's always been thought that the autonomic nervous system, thus the name, is outside of our control. And it really is only since the 1960s, and really with the advent of biofeedback, that we've learned that any physiological process in our bodies that we can monitor and feed back to give us information about, we can literally gain control over it. And we want to be able to gain control over our nervous system and being able to go to this place of calm, because literally every other area of recovery rides on top of how the nervous system is functioning. So the more we can help the nervous systems of ourselves as well as our clients be able to go into this place of balance, the greater the confidence they will have under stressful coronavirus crisis situations. And so this is something that is very important to learn. And what's really good about this process is that every single person can benefit and gain ability to regulate their nervous system. All it takes is practice.
So, Dr. Sideroff, your book is The Path, Mastering the 9 Pillars of Resilience and Success. So you have 9 pillars. Can you just tell us a little bit about what the 9 pillars, what does that mean? And how can we find the book? Because it's probably a good time for people to go onto Amazon and download your book and maybe, help with some of these techniques that you're mentioning.
Yes, thank you, Josie. So in my search for a comprehensive way of looking at how we deal with stress, I've identified these 9 components or 9 pillars, and they are in 3 different areas. The first area is relationship, and there's relationship with yourself, relationship with others, and relationship with something greater. And that component includes spirituality, having a purpose or meaning to your life, something that takes you beyond the small world that you live in. Next is organismic balance and mastery, and then there's physical balance, which has to do with your ability to calm your nervous system. Cognitive balance, which has to do with the control of your thoughts, control of worries, control of being able to stay in a positive frame of mind. And then emotional balance and mastery, which means being able to regulate your emotions. It means being able to address unfinished emotional business so that you could let go of it. And then the final three have to do with how we engage in the world: presence, flexibility, and finally, the last component is power, which I define as the ability to get things done. And so, yeah, my book is available, and I take people step by step, which I refer to as the path, which is the name of the book, The Path, Mastering the 9 Pillars of Resilience and Success. So the book takes people step by step through a process of becoming more and more effective along each of these 9 dimensions, which helps you deal with the stresses of everyday life, but also helps you deal better with the challenges of the current coronavirus situation. So let me just...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just kind of give you a couple of important ingredients in this process, because I've said one, which is practicing a relaxation exercise. And there's no substitute for practicing. We live in a world in which we're continually triggering the stress or the activation component of our nervous system. And this is even more true when we're in recovery. But we rarely engage the opposite, the parasympathetic recovery branch of the nervous system. And that's what practicing a relaxation exercise does. My 9 pillars gives all the other ways in which we can engage that parasympathetic, but practicing a relaxation exercise is key. And the other key is doing it within the context of feeling safe. Again, many of us go through childhood experiences in which we feel challenged, we feel like we're in an environment that's dangerous, so that we come to always expect that there's some danger. In practicing to relax, practicing to engage the parasympathetic nervous system, we want to first establish and tell ourselves, I'm in a zone of safety. I'm safe. I could let down my guard. And then finally, let me just give one more item in that process, which is how we take the practice of relaxing and we generalize it to the outside world. And we do that through a process that I call desensitization training. So that at the end of a relaxation exercise, when we're connected to feeling very deeply relaxed, that's when we bring in aspects of a stressful situation, but we are pairing it with the very relaxed state, so the stress loses some of its impact to activate us. We stay with that for just a few seconds, then we let go and we recover some more. We bring in the stressful image for a few seconds, and we shuttle back and forth, so that we're learning literally in that process to gain control of our nervous system. It's a process that we all need to practice, but in particular, if we're in recovery, it's very important to practice and over-practice the ability to relax so that we can use this tool throughout our day and throughout our lives.
So this tool would also, of course, work for anybody, and in particular, family members.
Yes.
We could share the book and the information with the families of the person in recovery. And the audience that we have tonight goes to several platforms, so people may or may not be in recovery, but I always like to say that we're recovering from something. And right now, I feel like with everything that's going on with the COVID-19 coronavirus, and then all of the unrest politically, and all, it's just, we're in a stressful, I feel like, this is almost not PTSD, but it's the stressful part of, and then later on it could turn into some sort of a PTSD. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because we're in such an acute time right now of stress.
Yes, I have a couple of points I'll make about that. First is that the more you practice and feel comfortable going to a place of calm, the less vulnerable we are to developing PTSD. The other thing is that, and I blog for Psychology Today, and I wrote an article there about how exactly what I'm talking about is important in strengthening our immune system, which under these conditions is very important. So the more you deal with stress, the more resilient you become, the better you're able to handle, better your immune system is to handle this virus. And one of the ways of approaching what we're dealing with today is experiencing it as a challenge rather than a danger. So this is a chapter in all of our lives. And if we can look at it that way so that we rise to the occasion rather than cringe at where we're at, that in and of itself helps us deal with the stresses that we're experiencing.
Well, I think that's definitely a great point, because your book couldn't have, you've had it out for a few years now, but now is the time that we need these tools. I think everybody, because we're handling situations differently. This is a time that I've never seen before, at least in my lifetime, with as much going on at once. So
yes, this is the biggest event in the world in the last 3/4 of a century.
Yes.
And so it's big, it's a challenge, but everybody, one of the things I like to say is there's always a best way to deal with any challenge. And it's up to each of us to find that best way. And when we do that, we all of a sudden are becoming proactive. And this, the cognitive balance and mastery is one of my 9 pillars. And this is the way we get on top of this series of events, is to be proactive, to take the challenge and look for all the different ways we can cope with what we're dealing with today.
Now, if somebody from the audience wanted to find you, how best would they reach out to you to get more information about your book and just maybe if they have additional follow-up questions?
Yes. So my website is drstephensideroff.com. I have actually free audio downloads, relaxation exercises. I'm also doing a program that I call 365 Steps on the Path. And every day I send out a message that addresses handling the current crisis in a better way. So it's in the banner on the top of my website.
Okay.
You can sign up right there and you can receive these messages on a daily basis. If anybody wants to reach me, I'm happy to get your emails, sideroff@ucla.edu. You can go to my website and sign up for my mailing list, where I send out newsletters and articles that I've written on a regular basis.
Wonderful. Now, another thing that I know that you have is the mind-body room, because at Addiction Therapeutic Services or Advanced Therapeutic Services, my treatment center, that's my day job, we have your mind-body room for our clients, and it's been so helpful. Can you explain that process a little bit to our audience?
Yes, certainly. So the mind-body room is something that I've developed. It's a standalone station that could be placed in any treatment center. And it includes me presenting information that takes people step by step through the path and my 9 pillars, but also focuses on this notion of self-regulation and restoring self-regulation. In the second half of each session, the client hooks themselves up and I take them through a guided biofeedback session that literally helps them develop their ability to self-regulate, which again, the beauty of biofeedback is that no matter who you are, we can set the parameters in order for you to be successful and feel competent and begin to feel a sense of control over your own body, and to be able to find a place inside where you feel comfortable, which is really an issue that addiction and recovering addicts have difficulty with, feeling comfortable in their own skin. And that's what this program, the Mind Body Room, is designed to help you with.
And it helps our clients with their anxiety.
Right. You can't be calm and anxious at the same time. So the more you train calmness, the more you feel confident in being able to manage your anxiety.
That's right. That's part of everything that you do. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any other thoughts to give or that you'd like to share with the group before we bring up our next speaker?
I'll just say that I encourage all of them to go onto my website and sign up for my 365 steps. We're halfway through the year, but you'll get some of the initial ones that get you started, and then you'll pick up on daily messages from me that help along these 9 dimensions become more resilient and being able to handle this crisis in a much better way.
Thank you so much for being on our show and writing an article for our edition this month, participating and always being there for us at ATS whenever we have questions for you with our clients. I know that you're available to them, and I hope other treatment centers will use your Mind Body Room, and so they can also get a hold of you through your email and your website if anybody's interested in that service,
right.
Or just to even find out where the services are available probably as well.
Right, and I'm located in Santa Monica, and I also do individual work, and so with I'm doing it all online now, so I could do it with people
you could do your telehealth.
anywhere.
You could do, that's right. Everybody's doing telehealth. That's great.
Right.
So
Yes.
if they're interested in a session, they can do it via Zoom.
That's correct.
From anywhere, because we do have also international viewers.
Okay.
So it wouldn't even
Very
matter.
good.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you,
Great.
Josie. It's been
Thank
a pleasure.
you so much. It's wonderful to see you. And until I can see you again at a conference or, for coffee, I look forward to those coffees we would have. But
Right.
Thank you for participating.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Now we're going to bring up Russell Rice. Thank you so much, Dr. Sideroff. Russell Rice is a local therapist. Here we are. He's an MFT as well. All of our panel are licensed therapists. Russell he's a founder of Riverstone's Residential Treatment Center for adolescents, primarily adolescent young males. And he has done fabulous work with these kids that I don't think that I can speak enough about what you do to turn around these boys and their trauma. And I hope you can speak a little bit about that. Your article tonight is Reversing the Ratio, a Formula for Teenager Transformation. Can you talk to us about the article? And then I'm going to probably ask you some questions about what you do specifically at Riverstones with the adolescents.
Yeah, sure. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me. So yeah, this is an extraordinary time that we're in. And as our previous speaker talked about how stressful this time can be, and especially when you're stuck at home, and especially when you're stuck at home with teenagers. And at Riverstones, for the last 20 years, we've been treating teenage boys ages 11 to 18. So we know the stress of how anxiety producing that kids' behavior can be, especially when they get to that oppositional phase, or they have some other sort of mental health issues that are at the heart of things. And now everybody's stuck at home. And so we see an uptick in referrals because there's more time spent, more conflict in the homes. All of the family issues are exacerbated. And so this concept of communication with our teenagers is really, really challenging. And probably if I get asked, one of the most common questions I get asked is, what one thing can I do to be a better parent or understand my teenager more or communicate with my teenager more? And that's really what this article is about. And it's something that every parent can do with conscious intention and practice. So we know that kids that have behavior problems or mental health issues, or they're just intense kids, they're just very energetic and active kids, they elicit naturally negative attention, right? Because we're constantly having to direct and redirect them, and to keep them safe and to act appropriately. And so the problem is not that we can't redirect them or that we shouldn't redirect them to keep them safe or teach them appropriate behavior. The problem really is in the ratio of the positive to negative interactions. And that's really what the article is about. It's a very short article, but it kind of encapsulates it. Essentially, if you can imagine interaction with somebody who's constantly pointing out what you're not doing right, and when you're correcting them all the time, the message, the meta message that's given in that communication when there's a really negative, positive to negative ratio, is that you're annoying and that you're not liked and that you're not enjoyed, you're not cherished, you're not loved. You're not seen for the good things that you offer. And so this is a pattern that parents get in that have intense kids. So again, it's no one's fault. It's a natural inclination to do this. But again, the problem is ratio. So what we talk about at Riverstones is reversing the ratio. And this can be very, very transformative, not only for the child, but for the relationship with the child and the parent. So, I ask parents sometimes, what do you think the positive to negative ratio is? And by the time they hit my office or the time their child is in our treatment program, it is clear that things are at a fever pitch and they are highly negative to positive ratios. And so what is that ratio? What would be a healthy ratio? Well, what we've come up with is a 5-to-1 ratio. That is 5 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction, or a negative interaction could also be defined as just a direction or a redirection or a correction of some kind. And so what we do at Riverstones, and I think in my 25 years experience working with teenagers, this might be one of the most important tools that we have in our toolbox, in addition to our clinical program. And we do all kinds of therapeutic approaches, including neurofeedback and other evidence-based practices. But everybody at Riverstone's trained to scan for success, constantly looking for what the kid is doing correct, and then reflecting that success back to them, refracting the light of their success. And if our lenses are calibrated correctly, there is far more success going on at any given time or any given day than there is lack of success. And we have a lot of experience with this because my staff, the youth counselors, are spending inordinate amount of time with these kids, and they're acting out a lot. And so with practice and with calibrating your lenses, scanning the environment constantly, looking at what's going well, and then complimenting them and energizing them and tell them that was very mature of you and you managed your anger very beautifully there. Getting that ratio to around 3 to 5 to 1 is really what we're targeting. And there's something quite magical about that ratio. If you look at it in the business world and management science, they have determined that a 3 to 1 ratio positive to negative interactions with bosses and their subordinates companies are a lot more healthy and they flourish. In marital work, John Gottman's wonderful work in Seattle, he talks about a healthy marriage has a 5 to 1 positive to negative ratio of interactions. And then even in the research on depression, our own internal thoughts oftentimes is a 2 to 1 negative to positive ratio. And when we get into the 2 to 1 positive to negative, we see the depressive symptoms start to wane. So this 5-1 is really something to shoot for, and with a lot of practice, it is definitely achievable.
Well, that's wonderful. Do you have any tools or any suggestions for parents to try to, database on a daily basis, maybe look at these ratios with their kids? Because I'm sure we have parents in our audience right now with kids at home. They're not in school, and I'm sure that's affecting them. Can you speak a little bit to how you think that the kids being out of school might be affecting our kids?
We hear about it all the time, Josie. I mean, it is, everybody is stressed out. These kids are stressed out. If you can imagine, they don't get to see their significant other, their girlfriend, their boyfriend. They don't get to hang out with their friends. Their social needs aren't getting met. They're spending an inordinate time in front of screens, which has some positives and a lot of negatives. And so, everything is exacerbated. People are more short-tempered, under stress. They're grumpy and they're cranky and they're snippy. And so my advice to parents is to really pay attention to this ratio. So find this little trick that we do here is if you give your kid a direction, let's say it's, can you please empty the dishwasher for me? And then they empty the dishwasher. So giving them a directive, let's consider that a 1, that's a direction. So try to find 3 to 5 things to recognize them for. For instance, how hard would it be for you just to say something like, Thank you for turning the TV off. I know you don't like doing the emptying the dishwasher, but you did anyway. And I really appreciate that. It was very mature of you. And then when they're done, maybe just come by and give them a pat on the back or a fist bump or a hug or something and just say, thank you. I appreciate that. That's very helpful. Well, just in my little example, that little interaction right there, I think I probably gave about 5 or 6 positive comments to the kid that counterbalances any of the negative interactions that happened during the day. So even if it's in the article I mentioned, if you give a kid a chill, a timeout, or let's say you send them to their room or their timeout place or something, you could easily say something like, I know that you're upset that I gave you the timeout, and yet you really showed the maturity of going to serve the timeout. You didn't cuss at me. You didn't break anything. You didn't slam your door, and you served your timeout, and now you're off, and now you're back on track. And I really appreciate that. You managed your frustration very well. Again, I think I just said about 5 to 7 positive things. It doesn't take much, but what it does take is intentionality and a lot of practice. And so really monitoring what that ratio is. And we can get into negative ratios, right? And some parents say, well, my kid doesn't do that many positive things. Well, it's just empirically not true. And we've tested this, Riverstones. There's far more success going on in any given moment if your lenses are calibrated to seeing it than there is lack of success or failure. And so these kids are at a time in their lives when they're forming their self-concept. They have this inner narrative about who they are, and they gather that inner narrative largely from the interactions with their significant others, their parents, their immediate family. And so if we're constantly redirecting them and correcting them, they get the idea that there's something wrong with them and they're broken. And our goal as parents is to make them feel loved and cherished. Maybe the greatest human need isn't to be loved. Maybe it's to be seen, and maybe it's to be seen in a positive light. And maybe it's to feel like my parents like me. They're constantly telling me what they don't like about me. And which is also what I think is a problem with a lot of treatment programs, is that there's far too much emphasis on what they're doing wrong. And while they're at Riverstones, these kids marinate in refracting the light of their success. And you can see it transform them just in that one tool that we use with the interactions with our staff, from cooks to clinicians, all the way through. Everybody's trained in this philosophy, and kids, we really see the difference, and we hear about it.
Well, I've had the privilege, of course, of doing work with you and coordinating your open house and inviting a bunch of my friends, colleagues over. That's the last time we saw each other, was when we did an open house at Riverstones, and your staff spoke. They're so amazing. Everybody that I've talked to, that has met you, and this was right before the coronavirus, they were just in awe about how you approach the kids in such a positive way versus other modalities that they use for teenagers, because teenagers are, sometimes they can stress out the parents, and especially right now while they're at home. So I appreciate you sharing this positive message for those of us who are home and we have kids at home. And like you said, even with each other, it's always, if we can find what's right, catch each other doing it right rather than wrong. Now, one last question I have that you might have a little insight before you go. Video games. I mean, do you have any insight? Do you have kids that come in with video game addiction or problems? I feel like the kids might be just all doing video games at home right now, that they're not in school and they're not outdoors.
Yeah, it certainly is an issue. And, the research has changed. There are a lot of video games that do good skill building things. And now a lot of the kids are using online games because that's their new social life, right? I mean, I have an 11-year-old, and that's how he hangs out with his 4 buddies. They get online and they're all talking, and it's as if they're all in the same room. It works really well. So, we don't want the kids to be on all day, of course, and it's important that we break it up, because there is a very serious problem with addiction of screens in general, and we do treat that at Riverstones also. So it's important to have blocks of time. You can set timers and so on to remind you. And, there's sort of a negative incentive to getting your kid off the video game too, right? Because the parents are often working from home. And that's also when the interactions happen and the arguments ensue. So, it's a really healthy thing to have some balance. There are some tools like you read a chapter in the book and you get an hour on screen time. And even mixing it up between TV and video games. And then also be sure that they're getting their activity during the day. And that is a huge problem and negative side effect of video games also. So it's not that all video games are bad, but again, we're looking at balance. And keep in mind also that with the new onset of the social aspect of video games, you're not just playing a game by yourself. You have all of your friends in a room, and that can be really important that they do that during this time.
And do you recommend that parents just have an open door with their kids then, basically, where maybe if they're in the bedroom playing, their video games, the kid knows that the parent can just come in and out and just be part of what they're doing?
Absolutely.
So that they're not closed in? That's probably an important thing as well.
It's so important that you bring that up, Josie, because, when the door is shut, we don't know what they're doing. And hopefully you have some sort of parent controls and software that blocks these things. But again, adolescents, they're at that curious time of phase and their hormones are going crazy. And, they will naturally drift towards inappropriate sites, and that can be a real problem. So definitely that's something to look out for.
So communication is important. Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful topic for Recovery View. I appreciate your article and you coming on the show tonight. If our audience wants to get a hold of you, how would they do that if they have further questions regarding their kids or any of the things you discussed tonight?
Absolutely. We have, you can get on our website at riverstones.org. We're in Redlands, California. And you can email me on the contact page. You can contact me there.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll see you back when we wrap up at the end. That was wonderful information.
Thank you, Josie.
Okay. Thank you, Russ. All righty. Now we are going to bring up Spiro Alexio. And Spiro is our feature author. Hi, Spiro.
Hi there.
Now, you're going to talk a little bit about your article that you co-authored with Terence Gorski.
Yes.
And the article is called The Dynamics of Relapse, Cunning, Baffling, and Predictable. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And you can share with us your relationship with Terence. He's a wonderful pioneer who we lost last week, I think a little over a week ago. And this edition has been dedicated to him. And thanks to you, we have his final article that we're able to feature and you on the show tonight to talk about all his work and, and your work together.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me here. I never thought that I would ever be writing anything with Terry Gorski. I never even thought I would talk to him. And I want to go back a little ways and tell you the first time I sort of encountered his work. I was one of those people that he talked about, this relapse-prone, chronic relapser. And when I was 30, I went to a therapist who said he specialized in relapse prevention. And so I said, well, I specialize in relapsing, so maybe we should get together. And so he said, I studied with Terry Gorski, and I didn't know who that was, but in that, at 30 years old, in working with that therapist for the first time, the veil was pulled back, and I actually saw my patterns, and relapse or slipping stopped being a mystery to me. And then I went on to my academic studies, and really with the idea that I wanted to understand myself first and make sure that, in addition to Terry's help through his books and stuff, that I wouldn't go back, I wouldn't fall back into addiction again. So at some point during that schooling, the doctor would enjoy this. I was studying the phobias, and of course Terry's work is in the back of my head. And as they described the physiological reaction that phobics have to getting on a plane or to spiders, the hair stood up on the back of my neck because it looked and sounded identical to the urging or the overwhelming urges to use substances that I had experienced. And as I'm sitting there, and this is in graduate school, I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if you can reconfigure the treatments used for phobics for addiction. And this involves what the doctor talked to about before, about doing desensitization and exposure therapy. And so I began developing a treatment that was an adjunct to Terry's work. In other words, Terry had this way of looking at your whole pattern, and as you get further along in the pattern, it gets more and more difficult to stop the relapse process. What I came up with, and again, for myself, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't vulnerable to slipping, I came up with a treatment that I could, in a second, like turning off a light switch, I could turn off the urges that had sort of taken me out in the past. And that became something called Q therapy. And the letter Q stands for the word Q, also known as a trigger. And since I'm a bit of a show off, I'll just demonstrate it for a few seconds. Don't get alarmed. I'm going to come right out of it. But this is a way that this is a treatment I developed so that people who have relapse tendencies, if they get too far along in the process, they could snap their fingers and go into a deep meditative trance. So here goes. Don't be alarmed, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so my voice, I was just in a forest with beautiful pine trees and a brook, and I was able to get there. I got to come out of it. Shake it off, Spiro. I was able to instantly get into a meditative state because I've conditioned my body and my mind to relax on command. Okay. All right. Let's move on to Terry Gorski. I started work as a therapist about 20 years ago. And since I struggled with relapse and I had to find sort of a non-traditional way to recover, and my recovery was an intellectual awakening as opposed to the spiritual awakening. I studied in college and graduate school every conceivable way to look at addiction, whether it was through social work, psychology, psychiatry, Greek myth, Native American folklore. I wanted every perspective on addiction. And so my practice then became this collective approach where I would get people who didn't do well in AA for one reason or another. And they would come to me because there was no other option at that time. And what I'd do was find out as much as I could about them. And as they were talking about themselves, I was formulating what their therapy would be. You know, they said they really loved gardening, or, you know, it would just come to me. And then I would reflect that back to them. And again, we're trying to resonate their soul as opposed to avoiding substances, and then, you know, move towards that person you want to be. So that's really what my treatments were about. And I've been a writer basically all my life. We have writers in my family, and we have mental illness and addiction too. But I knew I could write from the time I was 12 years old. I'll fast forward to 2012. I wrote an article about Amy Winehouse, who had died. And there was a big debate going on about whether you should give her special treatment or you should treat it just like everyone else. So I wrote an article called Requiem for a Songbird. And it was posted on an addiction blog. And my position was that, no, if you're really going to do person-centered therapy and individualized therapy, you have to factor in the fact that she's a celebrity and her reality is different. All right. So I take the article and I put it on Facebook. One of my friends puts it on her page, and so I'm following the comments that are being on her page. And all of a sudden, someone named Terry Gorski responds to my article. And I realized right away, this is the guy whose work saved my life 20 years before. So we have a discussion on Facebook, we're going back and forth. And soon after that, Terry contacted me and he said, I like the way you write, Spiro. I mean, I had mentioned relapse prevention in the article. He says, I really like your ideas and I like your idea, And I said, Terry, you like the way I write because I've been following your work for the last 20 years. So that began this sort of, and they were really conversations in the beginning. And the thing about Terry is he was so knowledgeable about so many things that I finally realized in our conversations that all I had to do was bring up a topic and then be quiet and start writing like crazy, Our first article together happened a few months later when Whitney Houston died. And we had this sort of framework about celebrities and treatment. And we wrote an article together, Whitney Houston, what was it called? In any event, it seemed that Terry, really helped hundreds, if not thousands, of therapists, but he had a very straightforward, matter-of-fact way of writing, and he saw something in my style that was creative. Again, I had written short stories, so he loved the fact that I could maybe say things in a more creative, interesting, at times funny way. And then that first article we wrote was a conversation between two therapists about celebrity treatment, right? Okay.
So how long did it take for you two to write this article, and what was the history about this article in particular? I think we only have a couple more minutes, but I'd like for you to
I'll get right to
share with the audience what our
apologies.
experience over the last week and how it turned around for it.
Very good. So I had something from 4 years ago, and it was something that Terry and I had worked on, and I decided in January I'm going to, I'm going to finish it. And it started out as one article, and the title, Dynamics of Relapse, was the subheading, and it went through a number of revisions. And during this time, Terry was not well, and so I would send him a version of it, and he would just say, okay, don't worry, it's fine. And I realized I just need to finish it. So I took Terry's framework for progression of relapse warning signs, and I added color to it. And that's the example of the piano falling on someone's head. And so he wanted me to sort of add a little variety to the way he wrote. And so I had already had all his comments from 4 years before, and I needed to sort of put it in a form that represented his work, but also had my sort of style and sort of flair. And a publisher an editor held that for 2 months, and finally about 2 weeks ago, I told him, listen, I want the article back. And so maybe it was 10 days ago, and I asked my friend Dr. Grinstead, who had worked with Terry forever, I said, listen, I got this article, it's finished. I think it might be Terry's last article. And within an hour, he had contacted you and said, I've got a place for it. I got a home for it. And, tighten it up, get it out. And so after 5 months of working on this article and waiting for somebody else to publish it, within 24 hours, Josie, your team put it together and put it out. And it was just an amazing experience for me to see it finally get into print. Okay.
Well, yeah, and I want to thank you for being part of the show tonight, because you just found out about all of this 2 days ago when I said, well, why don't you come on to the show and talk a little bit about the article? I appreciate you being available tonight and sharing with us the story. And I hope our readers will go onto the website and read the article and feel the, you know, the heart and soul of what you wrote with Terry as his last piece of writing. I think that's a beautiful tribute to him and you as a friend, you know, and again, I believe that there are no accidents, that everything is God's will. So for us to be able to turn it around and put you as our feature so that we could dedicate this edition to Terry Gorski and all the work that he has done for our industry and for people in recovery. And for those of you who don't work in the field, but you might be in recovery, any of the relapse work that's been out there for so many over 20 years has been really Terry's work. That Terry Gorski, when it comes to, and then we've had, you know, Stephen Grinstead and yourself, and of course others that have fallen from that. But it's the textbooks that it's been over 20 years, because when I went to school for a counselor, that's what we were learning as well. Yes. So I just want to thank you for being part of the show, sharing this information, and being part of the RecoveryView faculty.
I'll just mention one last thing, which is that Terry wanted everyone to recognize that relapse was a process, not an event. And if a piano fell on your head, as in the article, there was an entire process that happened before that. And that's his, it's one of his huge contributions, is don't look at that night you went out drinking, look at the previous 3 months.
That's right. It wasn't just the night, it was a process. It doesn't just happen if you're not ready. And especially now that people, you know, are isolating, there's been a lot of relapse even amongst professionals and people that have many years of recovery. So it's like, okay, let's just get back into recovery. It doesn't matter if you've relapsed, you know, I mean, it matters, but let's just get back, you know, into recovery however we can, right? Let's not go down that path, because there's, again, during these times, everybody's isolating at home. So call somebody, you know, call somebody from your program, call somebody for help if you're at home and you've slipped or you've relapsed. Just right now is the time to get back, you know, into that space of healthy living.
Yes, absolutely.
And
staying in touch with your passion too in this time, it can really pull you through it. And it's writing for me, but whatever it is, this is an opportunity also to do some of the things you've never had a chance to do.
Yes, thank you so much, Spiro. And now we're going to put you back down in the green room, and I'm going to bring up Gina Tabrizy. Hi, Gina.
Hey.
And for our 51st edition, what we are doing is special. We are featuring Gina's book, as I mentioned, and the name of the book is Pearls of Wisdom, Affirmations for Daily
Living.
Daily living. We didn't get that. I was like, daily.
It is so
daily something. Daily living. Okay, perfect. So, Gina, can you share with us a little bit? We have about a few more minutes with the show. If you can just share with us an affirmation or how your book, you know, how they can find your book, and it can help us during these times, just to, again, keep our lives positive.
Well, I will do my very best in the time that you've given me. And of course, I'm very appreciative of you and RecoveryView and the panelists. And I got to sit back and listen and take you all in and take in your stories and your spirit, which I connected with so much. I appreciate Dr. Sideroff and the holistic perspective. My husband and I own Harmony Heals Holistic Counseling Center. We do biofeedback, neurofeedback, yoga, Tai Chi. We're martial artists. We exercise avidly every day, meditation, acupuncture, etc. So we are right there with you. We started in 1993 and have always utilized holistic services to combine the body, mind, and spirit into healing. And of course, being that my book is about affirmations, I totally resonated with Russell around affirming those young teenagers in those years of emotional and spiritual and intellectual development, and just continuing to affirm for each other what is possible. And Spiro, I still am in love with your rocking chair and the calmness that you bring in your presence, and seeking spirituality And I heard you speaking about taking a fearless inventory and being authentic and knowing that this moment is just a moment. And that so resonates with my book. And so my book really came out of the gift of depression and the gift of cancer. I am a licensed marriage family therapist of over 34 years of experience in all mental health issues, specializing in trauma, addiction, and codependency. However, my personal journey gets me here and gets me live and gets me speaking to people. I believe you have to give away what you have. I believe it's your divine purpose on this earth to leave a legacy. When I was faced with cancer, I started writing little posts. I've written some poetry and some things. I've always had tremendous fear, and my fear and hesitation kept me from sharing parts of myself as a clinician, as a mother, as a friend, as a wife, but really as a writer. It was something. So, Spiro, I really resonated with you in that. And I think probably the other gentleman too. So for me, this book came out of finding my purpose and finding the gift of cancer. And so when I was diagnosed, I would write daily affirmations, but they're little stories, and there's a little moral to the story, and there's a little gift, because I had to find a gift in each day so that I would wake up each day without the burden and the struggle of cancer, but the gift of cancer, because what it brought me was an opportunity to seek my higher self and my higher purpose, and to not sit in the fear and to not sit in the resentment that cancer, like any struggle, like any adversity, like COVID, could bring to all of us. This intense energy of resentment and anger because we're powerless. And when you surrender to the powerlessness and you see that it's here to teach you and to guide you, it transforms you as a human being. It transforms your work and your relationships. It affects you on all levels. So I wrote these things daily and I would post them on Facebook. And the beauty of it is my entire family put this book together. So there's a link that you'll see. And the funny thing about it is when I chose to put this book out was actually November something, 2019, December. And no sooner had I put it out that a month later, Barbara Bush's book came out, and it's called Pearls of Wisdom. So sometimes the universe gives us all messages at the same time, and it just matters who's listening. And I'm hoping that when people Google her book, mine is under there, and so they'll go, let me get this one too, right? So
yeah, that's good.
So I really, cancer taught me to love this moment, to stop questioning myself, to stop belittling myself, to stop telling myself that I'm not enough. And it taught me that as long as I'm breathing, I have everything that I need and everything that's possible for me to be a healthy, happy, successful human being. And I just have to know that. And so these little stories and these little written phrases just would come to me, and it was part of my healing. And I finally had the courage to take all of those words and put it in a book. I self-published it, honestly. And it was to break that, that threshold and break the ceiling of my fear. It was on my bucket list. And that was another gift cancer gave me, was to start ticking away at everything that's on my bucket list, As we were talking about this, it was very hard for me to choose. I've got like all the ones earmarked. I want you to know that my recovery starts with, I'm also a recovering flaming codependent who's in recovery for 29 years. And so I lift spiritual books every morning, and I don't do anything before I connect. And without connecting with self and with spirit, when I don't do that, I am not capable of being present for anybody else. And the critical demon in my head and the stinking thinking and that negative voice that we all carry from all of our history and our ancestors always wants to chime in. And that's what derails us from our divine self and our ability to stay conscious and in the present. So practice affirmations, be them mine, be them anyone you listen on to, any millions of podcasts that are out there and on YouTube and things, and feed yourself spiritual, kind, loving words. If you start your morning that way, it will shift the way you go through your whole day. And they're so powerful because whatever you feed the mind and tell the mind, it believes it. So if you keep feeding it garbage and junk food like you're crap and you can't do anything and you're the worst and you're never going to make it, then your mind starts to believe that potentiality and you freeze. You become frozen, and all of these things happen in our nervous system just the way that Dr. Sideroff was describing to you in the sympathetic nervous system, and then we have to work in the parasympathetic to calm it down. So affirmations are a great way to calm down. So I'm going to read a couple to you because I want to be respectful of the end of the time.
Yeah, I think we were kind of a little bit over because we started a couple minutes late, but if you can just share one, that would be great. Yes.
I've got a few, so I'm going to trust the universe, and I just open the page. So, and that's how I do it. I do that with the Bible. I do that with a woman's book of affirmation, a woman's book of the soul. I do it with a book that's about healing the body. And I just meditate for a second. I pray, I listen, and then I open the page, and it always speaks to me. So the first one I opened was, every day and in every way, let's lift each other up as people. We don't have to unite just in our brokenness, or our abuses or loss of rights, but in our triumphs, our successes, and our joys. Be happy for your sisters and brothers who earn that crown. Praise them, for they are leading the way. And that feels to me so true of the protests and all of the division that's happening. And there's one other one called You Are Okay. And I think that's appropriate too. Sometimes you're just okay sitting in your own skin, in your life and in this moment. And sometimes you feel absolutely lost, confused, not knowing what to do or where to go or who to be. So hang on to those moments that feel right as rain, when there is nothing else you need to do or be, and everything seems to line up in your favor. We can't know every day and every moment that we are divinely right where we are meant to be. So we struggle or we suffer. When those blessed moments come, remember them and treasure them. They are there to remind us that everything is okay.
I love it. Thank you so much, Gina. That is a wonderful way to end our show so that we can all be at peace with those words. And I want to bring the panel up just to say goodbye, and thank you all for being here tonight and staying an extra couple minutes on the show. Just as a reminder, our next Recovery View will be the first week of September. We're celebrating Recovery Month, and we'll have our 52nd edition out and with the show. And we will keep you posted if you can go onto our website and join our list. And if not, you probably already have that information. But again, I just want to honor our panelists tonight and thank you for giving us such hope and just wonderful words as clinicians to the public, to myself, to all of us who are going through things right now, and these tools for resiliency. And I encourage our audience to reach out to them if you have any questions about anything that you're going through that resonated with our panelists. And again, thank you and blessings to all who have watched us tonight, and to our panelists, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Josie.
Bye.
Bye-bye.